The woman in the burgundy blazer had been watching the entrance for 40 minutes before she finally said something. She had been standing near the centerpiece arrangement, white orchids in a tall crystal vase, the kind that cost more than most people's monthly rent. And her eyes kept returning to the woman who had just walked through the double doors of the Harrington Museum of Art's East Wing. "Excuse me," the woman in the blazer said, stepping forward with the particular confidence of someone who had never once been told no. Her name was Patricia Caldwell, and her husband's family had funded the East Wing's restoration in 1987. She considered this relevant to most conversations. "I don't think you're supposed to be in here." The woman who had just walked in paused. She was wearing a charcoal wool coat, simple cut, no visible logo. Her heels were modest. She carried a small envelope clutch and had the kind of stillness about her that people who had grown up with very little money and then earned a great deal of it tended to carry. A quietness that came not from uncertainty, but from the long practice of not needing to announce herself. Her name was Dara Whitfield. She was 43 years old. She had grown up in a two-bedroom apartment in Baltimore with her mother and two younger brothers, and she had spent the last 18 years building a supply chain analytics company called Verdant Systems that, as of the previous fiscal quarter, was valued at $3.2 billion. She did not say any of this. "I'm sorry," Dara said. Patricia Caldwell gestured toward the entrance with a small, impatient motion. "This is a private event. The catering staff entrance is around the side. Someone should have told you." The room was not silent. The string quartet was playing something low and unobtrusive near the far wall, and the 200 guests who had paid $15,000 per plate to attend the Harrington Foundation's annual Innovation Gala were engaged in the careful, deliberate socializing of people who understood that every conversation at an event like this was also a transaction. No one stopped. No one turned around. Dara looked at the woman in the blazer for a moment. "I have an invitation," she said. Patricia's expression did not change. It was a specific kind of expression, polite but firm, the look of someone doing an unpleasant task they nonetheless felt was necessary. "I'm sure there's been a mix-up. These things happen." She reached out and placed her hand on Dara's forearm. Not hard, just a correction, a redirect. The way you might guide a child who had wandered into the wrong room. "If you'll just head back toward the, take your hand off me." Dara's voice was quiet. It did not rise. It did not shake. It was the voice of a woman who had sat across negotiating tables from people who had tried to undervalue her company by $200 million and had simply waited them out. Patricia pulled her hand back. Something shifted in her face. Not embarrassment, not yet, but the first flicker of recalibration. "I have an invitation," Dara said again. "My name is on the guest list, and I would like to enjoy this event." She walked past Patricia Caldwell and accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing server. That should have been the end of it. It was not the end of it. The Harrington Foundation Innovation Gala was held once a year, and it functioned as something between a networking event and a coronation ceremony. The people in attendance were not merely wealthy. They were the kind of wealthy that came with board seats and advisory roles, and the ability to make a phone call at 11 o'clock at night and have it answered before noon the following day. The foundation itself was run by a board of 7, and its annual gala was famous for one thing above all else: the Innovation Grant. Every year, the foundation selected one company to receive a partnership investment. Not just capital, but access, distribution networks, federal contracts, and the kind of institutional credibility that could take a company from successful to dominant. The grant was worth, depending on the year and the terms, somewhere between $800 million and $1.2 billion. This year's recipient had not yet been announced publicly. Dara Whitfield had received a personal invitation from the foundation's chairman, a man named Gerald Reeves, who had flown to Dallas 3 months earlier specifically to tour the Verdant Systems headquarters and meet with her executive team. The meeting had lasted 4 hours. Reeves had taken notes by hand, When he left, he had told her quietly that he expected the board's decision to be unanimous. The invitation she had received afterward had arrived by courier, heavy cardstock, hand-addressed. She had come to this gala because Gerald Reeves had asked her to come, and because the partnership, if it materialized, would allow Verdant to expand into a sector she had been watching for 6 years. Federal infrastructure logistics, a space where her technology could reduce supply chain failure rates by an estimated 31%. She had not come for the orchestra or the orchids. She had not come to be redirected to the catering entrance. She stood near the windows now, looking out at the museum's courtyard, where the lighting crew had installed soft amber uplighting on the stone planters. She was thinking, as she often did at events like this, about her mother, about the apartment building on Pratt Street, where the elevator had been broken for the better part of a decade, and where the hallways always smelled faintly of someone else's cooking and the specific kind of cold that came through single-pane windows in February, about what her mother had said to her when she was 11 years old and had come home from school, angry about something she could no longer remember. "You do not need anyone to make room for you," her mother had said. "You build the room yourself." Mrs. Whitfield. Gerald Reeves appeared at her elbow. He was 71, silver-haired, and had the careful, measured manner of someone who had spent 50 years in rooms like this one and had long since stopped being impressed by any of it. He extended his hand. "I'm glad you came," he said. "Gerald." She shook his hand. "Beautiful venue. My late wife liked this museum very much." He glanced toward the center of the room, where the guests were beginning to drift toward the presentation area. "I wanted to find you before we begin. The board finalized the vote this morning." Dara kept her expression neutral. "It was unanimous," he said. "Verdant Systems." She let out a slow breath. Not relief, exactly. Something quieter. The particular feeling of a thing you have worked toward for a very long time finally arriving, and finding that it arrived not with fanfare, but with the simple, solid weight of a door finally opening. "Thank you," she said. "I mean that. Don't thank me." The numbers made the argument. He smiled. "We'll make the announcement in about 20 minutes. I wanted you to be prepared." He moved away toward the presentation area, and Dara stayed by the window a moment longer, holding her glass of sparkling water and thinking about 31%. About the infrastructure projects that would run cleaner, faster, with less waste. About the jobs. About what her team had built and what they could still build. She turned from the window. Patricia Caldwell was standing 8 feet away, watching her. The woman had not left. She had gathered 2 other women, one in a silver-wrapped dress, one in navy, and the 3 of them had the clustered energy of people who had been discussing something and had arrived at a conclusion. Patricia's expression had shifted now. It was no longer the bored authority of someone correcting a logistical error. It had sharpened into something more deliberate. She crossed the space between them. "I don't know who let you in," Patricia said, "but I spoke to one of the event staff, and they confirmed that your name is not on the primary guest list." She paused. "I don't want to make a scene. I'm asking you, politely, to leave before, Patricia." The voice came from behind her. It was Gerald Reeves. He had turned back, apparently, and was now standing close enough to have heard at least part of what had been said. His expression was the particular expression of a man who was choosing his words carefully and would not be rushed. "I invited Ms. Whitfield personally," he said. "She is the Foundation's guest." A pause. "She is also, though we haven't made the formal announcement yet, the recipient of this year's Innovation Grant." The woman in the silver-wrapped dress made a small sound. The woman in navy looked at the floor. Patricia Caldwell's face went through several things very quickly. The processing of new information, the recalculation, and then, underneath all of it, the thing that Dara had seen before, not genuine shame, but the performance of it. The apology that was not about the behavior but about the consequences. I had no idea," Patricia said, looking at Dara now. "If I had known who you were, that's the part," Dara said. "That I'd like you to think about." Her voice was still quiet. It had not changed in register or temperature from the moment she had walked through the doors. Not who I am, Dara said. What you were willing to do before you knew. Patricia opened her mouth, closed it. The string quartet was still playing. Someone laughed near the bar. The rest of the room continued its careful, transactional socializing, mostly unaware of what had happened in the 12 feet of space by the east windows. Dara set her glass on a passing server's tray and walked toward the presentation area, where Gerald Reeves was now speaking quietly with two members of the foundation board. She did not look back. The announcement took 11 minutes. Gerald Reeves spoke about innovation and infrastructure and the particular kind of vision that did not wait for permission to exist. He talked about the Verdant Systems platform, about the modeling work Dara's team had done on federal supply chain failure points, about the 31% reduction figure that had stopped the board in its tracks during their internal review. When he said Dara's name, there was a moment, half a second, maybe less, where the room was still. Then the applause began. Dara walked to the front of the room and stood at the podium that had been set up in front of the foundation's banner, and she looked out at 200 people in formal wear, and she thought, not for the first time, about what it cost to be in a room like this. Not the money. The other cost, the one that was not discussed at podiums. I grew up in Baltimore, she said. My mother worked 2 jobs. We didn't have a car until I was 14, she paused. I'm telling you that not because it's unusual. There are a lot of people in this city, in this country, who grew up the same way, but because I think it's worth saying out loud in a room like this that the work we do at Verdant did not come out of nowhere. It came out of a very specific understanding of what it means when systems fail, the people who need them most. The room was quiet in the way that rooms sometimes went quiet when something was being said that people felt but did not often hear said directly. This partnership is going to let us do work that matters, she said. I intend to make that count. She stepped back from the podium to the kind of applause that meant something. Afterward, during the portion of the evening that existed for photographs and congratulations and the exchange of business cards, a man approached her. He was in his mid-60s, silver at the temples, wearing a dark suit that had been very expensive once and was now slightly too formal for his frame. He extended his hand. Congratulations, he said. I'm Garrett Caldwell. Dara shook his hand. Patricia's husband, he said. There was something careful in his expression, the practiced ease of a man who had spent a lifetime managing the aftermath of other people's behavior. I wanted to apologize on behalf of Mr. Caldwell, Dara said. I appreciate that, I do. She paused. But the apology I needed was from your wife, and what I needed it to be about was different from what it ended up being about. Garrett Caldwell had the decency to look uncomfortable. I understand, he said. I hope so, Dara said. She said it without meanness. She meant it. He moved away. She turned to find Gerald Reeves at her side again, this time holding a small envelope. The formal partnership documents, he explained, were being prepared by the Foundation's legal team, but this was a letter of intent, signed by all 7 board members. There's one more thing, he said. The Caldwell family, Garrett's family, specifically, had submitted a proposal for this year's grant as well. A real estate development project. Infrastructure adjacent. He looked at her steadily. The board considered it seriously for about 2 weeks before the Verdant numbers came in. Dara took the envelope. The room has a way of sorting itself out, Gerald Reeves said. It does, Dara said, when people let it. She left the museum at 10:45, before the formal closing remarks, because she had an early flight, and because she had said what she had come to say and received what she had come to receive, and there was no version of herself that needed to stay longer to prove that she belonged. The night air outside was cold and clear. A car was waiting. She had arranged it herself, a black sedan, nothing ostentatious. The driver was a woman in her 50s who had the radio on low, something with piano in it, and did not try to make conversation, which Dara appreciated. She looked out the window as the car moved through the city. She thought about Patricia Caldwell's face when Gerald Reeves had said the words, "Innovation Grant." The way the recalibration had moved through the woman's features like a weather system. The apology that had been, underneath its surface, not about what Patricia had done, but about who it turned out Dara was. The thing that stayed with Dara, the thing she had been turning over since she walked away from those east windows, was not the anger. She had felt anger, quick and clean, and it had passed. But the clarity of knowing, without any ambiguity, that the woman in the burgundy blazer had looked at her and made a calculation based on exactly one thing. And the clarity, following immediately from that the calculation had been wrong in the most expensive way a calculation could be wrong. She thought about Gerald Reeves, saying the numbers made the argument. She thought about her mother on Pratt Street. She thought about the 31%. In the end, it always came back to the work. She had learned that a long time ago. Not the room, not the invitation, not who was standing at the entrance deciding who deserved to be there. The work. The actual, sustained, unignorable work of building something that could not be turned away. You do not need anyone to make room for you, her mother had said. The city moved past the window, lit up and unaware. Dara Whitfield had built the room herself. That was what she had come from. That was what she had built. And tomorrow morning, with a letter of intent in her coat pocket, and a flight to catch at 6:15, that was exactly what she was going to keep building.